Hey guys. Okay, so in this video we're going to talk about the 4.6 beta 2 changes. Um, there's not a lot of changes between the two, but I have gone through the actually double check if it's recording. Yeah, I've gone through all the basically a lot of the issues that were reported on the GitHub page, and I resolved a lot of these issues. So now we're back to like 20 something, mostly enhancement requests and stuff like that. So go to pyRevit obviously as usual, and then releases, and then you can download the 4.6.2, which is the beta 2 release from here. And you don't have to uninstall the first one. You can just launch the installer, and it would basically override whatever you have existing. Make sure all your Revits are obviously closed and stuff like that. So that's that. And then once you launch your Revit and go to about, you see that the package is called base public now, and that's the base package deployment. I've included the what is it, pyRevit tutor again, the package into this basically distribution going forward, since this is the base for public usage. Okay, so let's talk about the changes. So rocket mode is not experimental anymore. So if you go on there, I've been testing this feature for almost a year and a half now, so it's in good shape. Reload required, it's enabled by default. If you have already disabled it in your machine, and when you install the new one, it still follows your configuration, whatever that is. But if you're installing 4.6.2 from scratch, then the configuration would be rocket mode activated by default. As I mentioned, I resolved a lot of the errors, a lot of the issues that we reported with the tools and stuff like that. One of them being the correcting of the rounding for make pattern tool. Whenever you wanted to export patterns from here, sometimes you would see the numbers are not rounded correctly. It really depends on the resolution of the sort of like the test that you're doing and whatnot, the pattern that you're doing. But for like very clear distances and numbers, you would sometimes see that the numbers are not properly rounded. So that's corrected. Well, let's talk about the pattern with model lines. So during this whole time, make pattern tool only worked with detail lines. Now it's silently worked with model lines as well. I'm still, saying that it's nice to pick the detail lines because, you're drafting a 2D pattern. But if you end up like accidentally drawing stuff with model lines and stuff like that, the make pattern tool doesn't differentiate between the two anymore. So you can mix and match or whatever. Like in this example here, I have all the lines, model lines, and in this one I have all the lines with detail lines. So if I select this one and basically recreate that pattern number 17 and overwrite it, you would see that there's no change to the pattern here, just slightly moved because of different pick points, but it's the same thing. Make sure you're on a 2D plan, floor plan, or detail plan in usual, and then if you're making a pattern that's detailed, the scale of your view is obviously important as usual. Everything else is still the same. I'm going to update the video that I made on the make pattern tool to kind of like explain all the extra hidden features and stuff like that as well. So that video is due for a good upgrade. We added let's see, go back to desktop and then overkill test. So I did a tool that's called Overkill. The tool was initiated by Tyler K, one of my friends, and he sort of like was super kind enough to contribute his code. I ended up changing a lot of it because I wanted, sort of like, make the tool more advanced about like what kind of lines you should delete and be aware of thicknesses and styles and stuff like that. So I ended up changing the tool a lot, but still, it's sort of like a combined work between the two of us. It's under Edit, Overkill, and I'm going to show you how it works in this view. Imagine you have a view like this. Right now, for the sake of the presentation, I have color coded all the lines, and so it's easier to see. Like you can see that this line, red, is thicker than the line that's under it, or in this example, the thicker line is under the thinner line. And then these two lines, they have two different colors, but they have the same thicknesses. So let's say I want to clean up the lines basically in this view. So I want to go here, edit, overkill, and it's going to ask me what kind of lines do you want to clean? All the lines, detail lines, or model lines? This is fairly self-explanatory. This part is the one that I want to talk about more, which by default it considers the line weights in this view. So if I have, let's say, actually let's do it right now. So I want to say clean all the lines. See, the only line that it deletes is the yellow line. Why? Because if I go and change the colors of these, it's going to take a second for it to load. Oh my God, that's very slow. Okay, so let's say I have black for all these lines. So generally your view looks like this. So that's why we want to do an overkill, because we don't see that line. Um, that's the only line that's being killed because it's the only line that's being overlapped by other lines and have the same thickness. So its existence on this view really doesn't matter. So by default, when you overkill, the tool maintains the look of your view, the look of the content. Now, if you don't care about this, you can go and do an overkill without considering the line weights. Then when I say all the lines clean up, then you see all these lines in the middle that were sort of like overlapped by this bigger line, but this longer line, they all get deleted. Like this instance, this, and this one still remains the same because this line only ends here. So a couple of lines that are not overlapping will stay, but if I do an overkill, don't pay attention to weights, you'll lose all the basically overlapping lines in this tool, and that's works pretty well. It really depends on how do you wanna clean up your view. Now I don't have an option for an option for sort of like making the tool pay attention to the line slide colors and stuff like that, because generally on my drawings I don't draw lines that are not black. The only way that we differentiate between lines is certainly with thickness, because every time, especially on laser printers, every time you sort of like print a line in gray, it basically basically sprays a bunch of on a spray printer or on a laser printer, it creates very densely close together black dots to create that illusion of gray. So it dramatically reduces the quality of the line work that you have. This is general practice. But if you care about the colors and you want this tool to differentiate between the colors and stuff like that, let me know and I can add that feature really easily in there. So that's the overkill. And then a couple of errors and bugs were fixed in the print order sheet tool. So that works a lot better now. And then let's talk about, okay, so the match tool has a new configuration. This is 2018. If you shift click on the match tool, this is how the configuration looked like. But Revit 2019 has added a bunch of features around, what is it? So now there's foreground and background patterns and line works and stuff like that. So I've modified the configuration for 2019. So if you if you're Revit in 2019 and shift click on the match tool, you would see a different window pop up. That has the same setting. It's just differentiated between the foreground and background for cut and surfaces. And I've realigned this dimension overrides to kind of make it nicer to understand, like above, below, prefix, postfix, the replace values in the middle, and then text position if you want to match it or not. So it's pretty much the same thing, except that it's nicer and also supports the new changes in Revit 2019. So that's also there. And then a little bit of the advanced features for you guys that develop tools for pyRevit. Let's talk about basic liquid templating. So a lot of times you're creating some tools and stuff like that, and there are two very important variables that sometimes you want to set in your tools. Let's take the match tool, for example. Let me open up the match tool in my match script. Okay, so there's this help URL and then the author that sometimes you wanna set. So let's go to this overkill tool. Actually, let me open it from here again. Overkill script. That's not what I was looking for. I think this is what I was looking for, but that's not it. Anyway, oh, I ended up closing the other one too. Okay, bad examples. Let's go back to match 2. Anyway, so there's this help URL that you can set, And that means that whenever I hover on this tool, you see that press F1 for more help under the tooltip. And if I click on F1, it'll take me to that video. But a lot of times, like part of that URL, especially if you're making these sort of like helps for your office environment and stuff like that, the part of that URL is always the same. So I've added this new feature, which is called it's sort of like a very basic liquid templating that it can define some key values inside the extension configuration file. And when you're loading pyRevit replaces those values with the templates that you have here, and it makes a really good system for consistently setting some of these values, like the help URLs or whoever the author is the tool. So you can just say author, and then in the string template and say author, something like that. And then the way it works is that you go into your extension. Let's talk about the extension tools, this one. You go inside your extension definition file, and the object is the same. You just add one more variable to it, one more attribute to it, which is called templates, and it's a dictionary. It's a dictionary of keys and values. And then you assign these author and doc path, for example, and then when pyRevit is loading, it sets these values properly inside your scripts, and then basically loads this value and stuff like that. It doesn't work on every run because these are the variables that pyRevit looks at them at the runtime. So when you're launching your Revit and pyRevit is loading, it looks up who's the author, what's the help URL, sets up these buttons and stuff like that. It also happens at every reload, but not at every run of the tool. So you can't really use this templating right now to put sort of like template code inside your scripts and stuff like that. If that's a helpful feature, let me know and maybe we can extend it in the future so you can add a template in here and say base imports, for example. And then pyRevit would replace that with the basic imports that you want to have on all your scripts. So that's also possible. That's one of the things that I wanted to talk about. I'll document all these features in for 4.6 final, but this is just to give you a heads up and get these features tested. The other thing is that sometimes, like for example, the pyRevit core extension and the pyRevit tools extension, they both have pyRevit.tab inside them. And the reason for that is that this little panel in here, that's the pyRevit core extension. But every other panel inside this pyRevit tab, they are part of the pyRevit tools extension. This means that these two extensions are cooperating to create this, to basically fill up this tab. The challenge is that if the pyRevit core gets loaded before the pyRevit tools, the pyRevit panel shows up here, and then all the other panels go after it. But if the pyRevit core loads up after the pyRevit tools, then your pyRevit panel would be here. And that's just because the order of these, however the order of these tools work. So if you have an extension that is adding something to pyRevit tab, or you have multiple different extensions that are creating panels inside the same tab, I've added a new feature to pyRevit. It's under testing right now, but it's called the UI sorting feature. You know about the layout files. So in the layout file, I can go here and under pyRevit tab, I can define a layout file that says, this is the order that I want you to place all these tabs in. And pyRevit at runtime will follow this order, creates everything correctly. The challenge comes in when you have another extension like pyRevit core wanting to add a panel to the same tab. The only way for it, because you can't really combine the two layout files from two different extensions into one, sometimes these extensions could be produced by different people, so they don't necessarily know about each other. So the solution that I came up with is sort of like placement directives. So if I go inside this layout, you see that it says place the pyRevit panel, but place it before all. So pyRevit follows this and places this pyRevit panel before all. I manually moved it in here, but if I reload pyRevit now, see what happens. That panel gets resorted to the start of everything. So that's how it works. And then there are a couple of other options for this. I'm going to document this obviously again, but just so you know, there is before all, there is after all. So to put it at the, after everything else, and you can say before. For example, if I want to place it before the modify pattern, I'm going to say before modify. And then if I reload, it should move it in place before the modify. It should. Let's see if I mistype everything, anything, modify correctly before. Modify tab. Okay, so I don't 100% know what's the issue right now, but let's see after modify. Let's give it a try again. Oh, well, actually, yeah, I know what's the issue. Because I'm not working in the same deployment. I am showing you the development deployment that I have. I'm working off of that, not off of the installation that we have. So let's go to app data, got it. pyRevit master. This is what I'm running on, just to show you the base deployments and everything else. So let's go to extensions. Let's go to core, pyRevit tab, and then place that one over here, and then say, let's say before modify. Okay, so I'm going to go here and now reload it again. Okay, let's see, what is this? This is definitely the base public deployment. Let's click on this and go to pyRevit tab, see if I am editing the file correctly before modify. Okay, so there's something wrong with it. I'll take a look at this. But basically, that's how it works. Or I can say after all. I can say after all. It probably won't work again. But let's get it tested. It might have something to do with the panel name recognition and stuff. Oh, okay. So yes, I know what the issue is. I've only merged the before all system into this. But basically, that's what it is. So this is going to be before a panel, after another panel, before all, and you just leave the other stuff empty, and then after all, like that. So this is an upcoming feature that will be posted, will be finalized for the 4.6 final. I know it works because I have a different branch that I'm working on a new toolset, which is called the pyRevit tags. New toolset for pyRevit. It completely works in that. I probably might have merged some of the changes incorrectly between the two different branches. So that's the UI sorting that I wanted to talk about. And then there is this new feature for getting single values. I'm not 100% sure if I've merged it into this this version of pyRevit for beta, but let's say from pyRevit port forms. And then once that's done, forms.ask. Yeah, this is not, I have not merged that into pyRevit yet. Okay, so there's a new feature coming up for sort of like, asking for simple string, simple integer value, simple dates, simple set of options, like you can present the user with a combo box, and you can pick it from there, and basically you can ask for different sets of values. Now, the only other thing that I want to talk about is that let me switch to the development branch. And then load from there. So a while ago, probably around last year, I started talking about adding some debug features to the pyRevit output window, so you can run it in the debug mode and you see the values of the variables and stuff like that. During this time, I sort of like my knowledge of debugging and logging in programs I ended up deciding that I'm going to work on the logging features more, because overall that would push you as a programmer to create better programs. And provide more logging features in a program, so it's a lot easier for you to debug your code and find the issues and stuff like that, and also for the other people that are reading your code and stuff like this. It's just, I decided, like, this is personal preference, I guess. I know that a lot of software engineers out there agree with me on this, and I'm basically following their suggestions and advices and stuff. But it seems to be the overall opinion in the software world that logging is much more valuable in the long term, in the long run, than debugging features. Debugging features are really good, really handy, but at the same time, there are two challenges for me. Is that it takes a long time for me to be able to develop some features like this into pyRevit. I might end up deciding to do it in the future, but at this point in time, with the amount of time that I have and everything else, I think it makes more reasonable for me to work on sort of like improve on the logging features that pyRevit has. So if you control click on any of the tools, you don't see that upcoming REPL window at the bottom of the window anymore. I've disabled it until sometime in the future, maybe if I want to go back to it. But the pyRevit obviously has its own logging feature. I'm going to do individual videos on how to use these kind of stuff. But one of the other things that the new pyRevit window has is a sort of like a hidden logging panel. So if I click on this tool, you see that it runs a test. It shows me an error on the top of the screen. Let me actually go to the code and start presenting this in a better way, so we can edit some of the script. And okay, so I'm getting the output window, and I'm using the output window to log an error. Let's disable this line. Oops. Let's disable this line, and pyRevit, these are the logging. I don't care about any of these. Okay, let's disable that too. And let's run the tool again. Okay, so this is a clean output window. Nothing happens because we're not printing anything. Now let's test the pyRevit's internal logging feature. So you can ask script get logger to get the logger for your script, and then use the info warning, error, critical, and debug to debug some output some messages. So if I normal click on this tool, it would give me a couple of messages. This is the testing, the print that we have. This is the info log, the warning log, the error log, and the critical log. They all show up in the standard window because I have in my pyRevit configuration. I'll do a complete video on this, but this is for people that are already basically use these features. In my pyRevit configuration, I have on verbose, so all the logging.info logs will show up. So I can see that info line shown here. Warning, error, and critical always show up because they're important. Now, if I go and control click on the tool, I see one extra line that's all the debug messages. So all the debug messages will show up here too. Now, these are the debug messages that you want to present basically for debugging. A lot of times, if you have a lot of debug messages in your code and you run your tool in debug mode, this output would be a lot bigger than this. There would be thousands of debug messages and stuff like that from different components. Maybe you're using some pyRevit features and stuff like this, and they would output their own debug codes and whatnot. So it might be a little bit overwhelming. For normal testing and sort of like hidden logging and stuff, pyRevit has a panel that's on top of this right under the tab bar. I'm gonna display it basically. Let's go to pyRevit output. This is still a work in progress. That's why I have to look up some of the code that I have here. So log error. Okay, I'm gonna say show log panel. I'm gonna say output. Let's show log panel. So this feature is called the log panel. So if I click on this, it'll print the logs, and it would show me this little orange line here. pyRevit used to have a progress bar at the bottom of the window. That's been replaced by this nicer, better progress bar on top of the window. This also has the benefit of adding indeterminate progresses to pyRevit window, and I'll demonstrate that in a few seconds. But basically, this is the panel. If you hover over it, it tells you that if you click on it, it opens that console for you. So there's this whole new area on top of all the outputs that you can write normal text. This is not HTML. You can just write normal text to this. So to demonstrate that, I can say, well, login error is one of them. Let's do a output. Dot, let's use one of the log info. Let's do a log info, and even if I don't show this, it'll activate that for me. So test info. I'm going to go back to my tool, launch it. It'll open that panel, and you can see that information is shown here, that message. I can clear that message from here, or I can click on it, and it would open that for me. And once this final adjustment on this done, basically that line would be here with the correct color and stuff like that. So that you can see that text visible in here. So this panel has the benefit of showing the message right here. And also when you open it, you can see all the messages that you have logged in there. You can clear them, copy them, clear all the errors, and close, open, and close the tab. This doesn't affect the output in there. So you can use this feature to basically output some of the unnecessary information that the user generally doesn't want to see in here, or basically show the user some non-modal basically notifications to the user about something that's happened. So instead of logging info, I'm going to test log error now. You can do this, and then you can say pyRevit lab, and it would show a red line there with the error that I have there, and you can just basically clear it from here. So that's a sort of like a side panel, hidden panel that you can use to log some information into it. And then it's got log OK with a green line. So this would be a green action. So if I do that, it would be something like that. Green, you're good to go. You can put an OK message in there, and once you clear it, it gets clear. So let's log OK. These are part of the output window. Log OK, log info, log warning, log error. The output window, you can set the icon or reset the icon on the output window as well, and then show and hide that log panel. Now, I can also do an indeterminate progress on the output window. So I can say set the indeterminate progress to true. So when I open this window, it'll show me that progress bar with indeterminate progress. So you can just activate that, and then your script can go run whatever it needs to do. It does all these things that it needs to do, and then once it's done, you can set the indeterminate progress to false again and turn off that feature. And it basically turns this off. So it's a much better, nicer way of showing these stuff in pyRevit. Now, the pyRevit has its own. This is only basically helpful for tools that want to do an output window. There's some information that they need to output to the user. If you just want to show the progress of some action, I'm going to do a bunch of videos on this, all these never talked about pyRevit features. But basically, pyRevit has a progress bar like that shows up on top of your Revit. There's indeterminate progress, the different progress types and whatnot. There's a cancel button here, and you can show it. And it basically attaches to the top of your Revit window. So if you have multiple different Revit windows running, and if you click on this, it actually attaches to the top of your window, and it shows you which one of your Revits is running that process. So it's a much nicer progress system for tools that are not outputting any information to the user. There's some tasks that they're working on. So this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about. That's sort of like set the direction that you won't be seeing any debug tools in pyRevit anytime soon. But there's a lot of logging features that I'm working on to make it better and more efficient. And also I'm going to do different. So there's this section in pyRevit there's a link here that says the script anatomy. And when you go here, there are many different topics that this article is talking about. As I'm completing the documentation, which that's what I'm going to do going forward, I'm going to start doing videos on every one of these single features, so everything that's about logging, everything that's about controlling the output window, all the features of the script module, how to use temporary files and stuff like this in Revit. So all the functionality and sort of like the systems that the pyRevit provides to you to make your scripting easier, and sort of like use these nice features in pyRevit to display progress to the user, or that kind of stuff. So this is basically all that's in the 4.6.2 update. I think we talked about everything. I'm going to continue going through the bugs and issues that are reported in here under the issues. And let me know if there's anything else that you can find that is not running correctly in these recent updates, and add them to the issues here, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. Thank you.